Young, and we are taking your legal questions live tonight on the air. Give us a call if you have any questions to ask, 850-392-1544. And tonight, as always, I've got a guest with us, a very special guest tonight, Mr. Ted Howell, my partner.
Yes, sir.
And I did want to let everybody know up in the Wiregrass area, Ted is also admitted to practice in Alabama. So
that is correct.
We can answer Florida questions, we can answer Georgia questions, we can answer Alabama questions.
We got the southeast,
well,
maybe not the southeast cover, the lower southeast cover.
We got the tri-states.
There you go.
That's good. So anyway, we're taking your calls live. Like I said, tonight we're talking all about injuries. So if you've been involved in a motor vehicle wreck, maybe a slip and fall, or maybe if you have an insurance question that you just don't know what to deal with, if you're dealing with an insurance company, it could even be a property insurance matter. We're answering all those questions live on the air tonight, so give us a call. You know, Ted, a lot of things going on lately in the world. You know, we've talked about it in prior shows with the legislation that's passed in Florida. You know, some big changes. What are some of the biggest changes you've noticed in your practice, you know, doing personal injury with the changes in the law? How's it affected you?
Right. You know, the most immediate one is now that this, with this new tort reform that's been passed by our legislators, we now have a statute of limitations that's only 2 years. So that means we need to file our lawsuits a little more quickly than we have in the past, but that's not been a huge change because we have the cases coming in, we monitor them, we know, and we can adjust. But with respect to cases going forward now post, and I can't remember the exact date, it was mid-March,
like March
roughly.
24th, I think.
There's been some significant hurdles that have been put on claimants with respect to what they can recover with respect to future medicals and how those can be reimbursed and at what rates, and access to medical care for those that are injured that do not actually have health insurance. Some of the methods and procedures we've used in the past, they've now made that a little more difficult, the hoops to jump through. So it's going to be harder going forward, but we can deal with it. We're going to make sure we're going to get everybody protected, get everybody taken care of, but it's even more important now than ever to make sure that you contact someone very quickly with respect to your claim, because things can get off on the wrong path now more so than ever. One of the tricks I've seen most recently that's a very difficult pitfall is I had a client who had an accident, called up the insurance company, wanted to try to see if they could get it taken care of on their own. The insurance company got their bank account information from them, gave them an advance of $500 and said, I'm just going to send you a little piece of paper, you sign it, we'll make sure and take care of your medical bills. This young lady was smart enough to read that document, which would have eliminated all of her claims, but they went ahead and advanced the money first,
right,
on the hopes they'd go ahead and sign it, kind of encouraged them to. She was smart enough to come and see me afterwards, and fortunately we were able to make a policy limits recovery for her, but she was about 5 seconds away from totally wiping her claim out.
Right. You know, that's one of the things that I've seen a lot too, and I've talked about it on prior shows before, is, you know, insurance companies, you know, when we get asked questions a lot, well, who's your biggest competition? Is it this firm? Is it that firm? Our biggest competition is actually the insurance company, because you have trained claims professionals they're trained to try to minimize payouts for insurance companies and settle claims quickly. And if you get involved in a wreck, it may seem very enticing to accept $500 or $1,000 or
and they'll take care of your medical expenses.
Yeah, and they'll take care of your medical expenses, or maybe even $3,000. But what a lot of people don't realize is, in Florida at least, you have a medical benefit on your auto policy called personal injury protection that pays up to $10,000 for medical bills, but it only pays 80% of those bills. The other 20% is going to be your responsibility unless you are able to make a recovery. Well, if you settle a case for $2,000 or $3,000, you know, you take one visit to the ER here locally, get a couple of CT scans, you'll walk out of there with a $15,000, $16,000 bill. You know, 80% paid, and then you settle for $3,000, and you're upside down $3,000 or $4,000, and you can't do anything about it.
And there's no way anyone can tell you what your claim is valued at or worth within a week of the accident. I mean, Les, how many times have we had folks, especially folks that maybe are younger and healthy, and their adrenaline's pumping after the accident, they think everything's okay, and they tough it out, that adrenaline wanes off, it starts to wear and tear, and then all of a sudden, you can even have something where you thought you were okay, and you know, a couple months later you're looking at a potential surgical option. And if you settle that case, it's over. You don't get to do it more than once.
Yeah, you know, we typically we do want to push cases quickly. We want to push them efficiently. But sometimes we just have to wait and let the medical play out, because we have to balance a lot of things, and that's one of the things as attorneys that we're trained to do. We look at all the different factors, and it's designed in such a way to help the individual focus on what is most important for them, which is getting the treatment, getting back to work, and getting better. You don't have to worry about dealing with insurance companies. You don't have to worry about how much is my claim worth. You don't have to worry about, do I have to protect this lien or that lien? Do I have to reimburse Medicare, TRICARE? There's all these nuances of a personal injury claim. That's what we're trained to do, and even the insurance industry has recognized that hiring an attorney typically will yield 3 to 5 times more in a recovery than what a person would normally get representing themselves. And so it's definitely a smart thing to talk with an attorney. But of course, one of the questions I always get asked is, well, how much does it cost?
Right.
And,
and look, there's no out-of-pocket upfront expenses anytime you hire someone to handle a personal injury claim. We work on what's called a contingency fee basis, which means we only get paid if and when we make a recovery. And if it's a case where you end up, maybe it is a situation where you only needed a couple $1,000s, then the payment will be very small, it's percentage-wise. But it's better to be safe than sorry, because you never know how that path is going to turn out. And if you get off on the wrong step at the beginning, it can be extremely difficult to get it back on to the right path. So it's always better to have a trained professional helping you, just like the insurance companies have their team of trained professionals helping them, because you need someone looking out for you, because the most important thing is to make sure that whatever you need, you're getting it taken care of, you're getting those medical bills paid, you're trying to get as close as to where you were before the accident as a result of this process.
That's right, that's right. Well, we've got our first call tonight. We have Simi, who's calling from Dothan. Simi, go ahead with your call.
Okay, mine was involved in an accident about a year ago. My car was parked, and the police had a high-speed chase. They were chasing some guys, and they hit my car and called me like $700-800 to get my car fixed, plus my $250 deducted out of my pocket. And I had to file a minor insurance claim on my insurance because the guy gave the information to the police officer that it was false. And my insurance company calling their insurance company, writing a letter and no response. And I thought my insurance company should give me a check for the depreciated value of my car.
Simi, that's I'm very sorry to hear about that. But that's an excellent question, and it actually opens up. I mean, there were like 3 or 4 issues that I heard on that right there. Simi, just to clarify, were you hit by one of the police officers that was chasing this person, or was it the person that was being chased?
The person that being chased.
Okay. Ted?
Right, there's a couple of things. First, just like it is in Florida now, there's a 2-year statute of limitations up there in Alabama. So we're already a year out for your call. So it's important, Simi, that you reach out to someone like us very quickly to make sure that claim is properly pursued. It sounds like they may have given you the incorrect information. Alabama is a mandatory insurance state. There's a mandatory minimum of $25,000 in bodily injury coverage. Now, this gentleman was obviously not following the law, it doesn't sound like, because he was running from the police. But it's important that you work both with your insurance company and with this individual. And if they won't give you the correct information, that's what they build courthouses for. We can file a lawsuit, we can figure out what, if any, coverage that gentleman has. Even if he does not have coverage, if he has available assets that can be pursued, he still has liability and exposure. So it's important that you do that sooner rather than later so you can figure that out. And then last but not least, you mentioned something about your property damage. The typical fair market value evaluation is how you're going to look at that, but depending on the make, model, the number of miles, everything that you had on the vehicle, there may be a situation where you can have a diminished value claim on top of that, but it's important to, that's a very fact-specific analysis, and we need to do more looking into that. But I'll be honest with you, very frequently with respect to the property damage, you're not going to get as much as it's going to take you to go out and buy a new replacement vehicle. And that's just the measure of damages that there are with respect to property damage. It can be a very unfortunate situation, so it's important that you have that looked at. It's already been a year, Simi, so I think you need to reach out to somebody very quickly so that can be addressed.
Yeah, you know, one of the questions I get asked a lot of time when people come in, they always say, well, why should my insurance pay for this? They're the ones that caused the wreck. And there's a lot that goes into that. And using Simi's situation as an example, it sounded to me like he had to run his repairs through his own insurance.
Because they gave him false information.
Right, because he didn't have the at-fault driver's information, so he had to run it through his own policy, and he had to pay a deductible. And most every insurance policy, if you have comprehensive and collision coverage on your insurance in Florida, and I guess in Alabama as well, you're probably going to have a deductible. And the deductibles typically range from $250 to $500, but that's money you have to pay out of your own pocket. Your deductible is basically the amount that you self-insure for before the insurance company steps in. So oftentimes, if you can prove the other side was at fault, you can get your deductible back from their insurance company if they have the right coverage. And it sounds to me like that was not the case with Simi. But the other thing he mentioned was the diminished value. When cars are repaired, they lose value. Even though they may be fixed, even though they're supposed to be put back in the same condition they were before the wreck, they still have that dirty Carfax.
Right.
And if you go to trade your motor vehicle in at one of the dealerships or at a used car lot, they're going to run your VIN and they're going to see that this vehicle has been involved in a wreck, and they're going to give you less money for it. Well, the difference between what your vehicle is worth after a wreck and it's been repaired versus what your vehicle would have been worth without being in a wreck, that is your diminished value claim. And in Florida, if you have a repaired vehicle after a wreck, most of the time the insurance company, they just want to tell you, oh, we'll fix your car, we'll give you a rental. But you are entitled to that diminished value claim. It just has to be documented. You have to have somebody who has a background in valuing those vehicles write it up and give you that evidence. I mean, it's all evidence-based.
Right.
But if you can present that to the insurance company, you are entitled to get your diminished value as well. So.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably a good time to take our first break of the evening. Remember, you can give us a call. We're taking your calls live, 850-392-1544, and we'll be back just in a minute. Welcome back to Law Call, where you're taking your calls live on the air tonight. We're talking about all about injuries. Myself, Les McFadder, with Perry and Young, and my partner, Ted Howell. We're here to answer any questions you might have, so please give us a call, 850-392-1544. And Ted, every now and then we do get email questions. The email address again? LawCall at WMBB.com. LawCall at
There you
WMBB.com. If you have a question, you don't want to call us, you can send us an email and we can take that question on the air as well. And I think we've got an email question that came in from Donna, if y'all can put that up. Donna says, my neighbor's son was in a bad wreck last night. Should they wait to see how their insurance handles things or go ahead and talk to a lawyer now? Ted, we've kind of talked about that from the very beginning. I mean, you know.
This is the problem. I mean, you know, they are ready. Depending on your neighbor's son's situation, it's very likely the first claim he's ever had, maybe the family's first claim they've ever had. Insurance company's been through this a couple of thousand, if not 10,000 times. They're going to wheel and deal. They're going to use phrases and terminology you're not familiar with. They're going to talk to you about no fault this and med pay that and liability, and they're just going to speak past you. And then they may try to do something similar to the young lady I discussed earlier and try to get you to sign off on an early release before you even know what your condition is, while you're still trying to get over the, you know, nervousness and the factor of you've just been in an accident. So it is imperative that you speak with someone sooner rather than later. Now, the first thing, always, I tell anybody, first thing is deal with medical attention.
Yeah, she said it was a bad wreck.
Yeah,
and
so I mean, that's the very, very, very first thing is, I mean, because your health is, you can't, you know, I have people all the time like, I want to have a good claim. I'm like, no, you don't.
No, you don't.
You can't buy your health. I mean, your health is your most important thing. So the medical attention is always the first and foremost thing that you need to take care of. And there's no reason that you need to talk to the insurance company right then when you're trying to get help, especially if this has been a bad wreck. So make sure he is seen by the right medical professionals, getting into the right specialist, whatever he needs for his situation. But as soon as you can kind of get calmed down, the next call needs to be to a legal professional so that you know your rights.
Right.
I had another one very recently where the insurance company was immediately doing the right thing, bad accident, tendering a check to the family in a very, very severe loss. And if the family had not called me, they would have signed the release, cashed that check right then, and forfeited several $100,000 in uninsured motorist coverage that they didn't even realize they had, because it was not just the coverage on their own policy, but it's very common that you have what's called resident relative coverage. If you live with another blood relative in the same household, you may qualify on more than one policy. So it's always important, even when you think the insurance company's doing the right thing, because you take a case like that, if the insurance company's already tendered the money, then we're going to tell you, yes, you should accept that, or no, we need to look further. And you always want to at least look. And it's, like I said, it's no cost to you because we're purely on a contingency fee basis to make sure you're not forfeiting any benefits before you sign your John Hancock on any sort of paperwork.
That's right. Well, and you know, Donna's emailing in for her neighbor whose son was in a really bad wreck, and my guess is that her neighbor, I don't know if her son's a teenager or a young driver perhaps, that's the parent's worst nightmare, obviously.
Yes.
I mean, I've got two kids that are driving age. And, you know, it keeps me awake at night when they're out, and it is a parent's worst nightmare. And the last thing you want to be thinking about as a parent of a child that's been involved in a wreck, or any loved one that's been involved in a wreck, is, what do I do legally about it? You're not thinking about that. You're thinking about your kid. You're thinking about getting them the medical care they need. You're thinking about making sure you're addressing their immediate needs. And that's exactly what you should do. And, you know, sometimes I've even said it before on the show that it almost seems offensive in a way, like to think about contacting a lawyer. But if you think about it from a big picture standpoint, it really isn't, because the lawyer's job is to watch your back and do the work that is necessary while you can focus on those things that are important. So in a bad wreck situation, you know, there could be cameras on area businesses at different intersections. There could be data from the vehicles themselves, from the vehicle black boxes, or even their infotainment systems have a lot of GPS data these days, collect data on text messages, phone calls. All that data, if it is not locked down and preserved early, you lose it. And that could be the difference in having a successful claim, because you can show through the evidence that was gathered that that other driver was texting, or that other driver was going 20 miles over the speed limit, versus just a pure speculation like, well, I think you might have been texting, but I don't know. A lawyer's job is to lock that down right then and there, so you don't have to think about it later on, but later on when it's important, you'll have it. And that's one of the main reasons, especially in these catastrophic cases, anything dealing with heavy trucks, anything where there's a mangled car, there's a catastrophic injury, that is exactly the time. So if you have a friend or a family member that is going through something like that, put that in their ear. Say, hey, look, I know you probably don't want to think about this right now, but you really ought to think about getting somebody who's watching your back and can get that evidence locked down, because it can be the difference.
Right. It can be night and day. Because you got, I mean, look, we don't want to, I mean, you got to get the medical attention, but you also want to make sure there's an avenue to pay for that medical attention.
That's exactly right.
So you got to be a good steward for your family and make sure that you are protecting your loved one in that situation. And, like you said, the law is the last thing you're worried about. You're not trying to make money off of this thing, but you need to be fairly and properly compensated for it. And you didn't, it sounds from the email, it didn't sound like that young man caused this accident. He didn't ask for this.
Right.
So he needs to make sure he looks at all avenues of recovery, because you cannot make an educated decision on what to do without information. So we want to provide that information so that you can, as a family, then make a decision on what is the best path going forward.
That's right.
And you can't make that decision until you have all the information.
And you certainly don't want to make that decision based on emotion either.
No.
So,
no.
Folks, we're going to take our last break of the evening. We've got one more segment after this, but we will be back in just a minute. Welcome back to our final segment of Law Call.
Yes.
Ted, we were talking going into the break, right before we took that break, about folks who've had loved ones that have been involved in really bad wrecks and what their focus ought to be, and why it's important to hire an attorney. Right. And I've been practicing for 25 years, and my first half of my career was representing insurance companies and trucking companies. And when I say that you ought to jump on getting an attorney early, I mean it, because insurance companies and trucking companies especially, they have what they call go teams, or rapid response teams. Mm-hmm. I'd get calls in the middle of the night, there's a fatality on I-10, get out there, and I'd call my engineer, I'd call my accident reconstruction expert, I'd call my private investigator. We would isolate our driver. We would, get him away, cooperate with the police, but get him away from running at the mouth and talking, have the photographer out there taking pictures to document everything. And so by the time we got a call from a personal injury lawyer 2 or 3 weeks later,
you already had
I already knew everything that was going on. Mm-hmm. And many times it was, guys, this is something we have to, we own this, we got to pay this. And then other times it was, yeah, your guy that was, on meth ran out in front of the truck wearing all black, and, and you can see it on the dash cam, and there's nothing you can do. Right. But we knew that right then. And so the reason we're so passionate about telling folks in the viewing area about contacting a lawyer is because we want you to have the same...
Even that playing field.
We want you to have that even playing field, just like those big trucking companies and insurance companies have.
Because it's not just that rapid response. They've been training beforehand.
That's right.
I mean, you would go in and talk to these companies, the insurance companies, give them the spiel. The driver knows that he's not supposed to talk to anybody other than the police. He calls it in. He documents everything right away. So he's prepared. He's a professional driver, typically in these types of cases. So they know what to do, and they know how to start taking care and preparing for what may be coming.
Every trucking company that I'm aware of that's worth its salt has a plan in place that they instruct their drivers on. Mm-hmm. They have, I mean, it's a list. Call your dispatch, call 911, make sure the other person's okay, get your camera out. Don't talk to anybody. Right. So they train these folks to do that,
and they don't always follow that.
They don't always follow it, but the point is you want somebody that's looking out for you if you or a loved one is unfortunate enough to be in a situation like that, and that's what we're here for.
Right.
So with that being said, it's the last part of the show. This is where we always do our shout outs, and I've been making a list throughout the show because I've been checking my text messages. Who do you got to give shout out to?
Let's see. Most importantly, the Gary Starr. We're missing you tonight, buddy. Take care of him there at Gulf Coast tonight, especially Danielle. Make sure he's doing all right. Make sure he's eating his Wheaties and getting better. We had Nick Utes looking at us tonight. Nick, we'll have him on here probably for too long, so that he can't just stay up in Texas. He's going to have to actually
That's right. He's going to have to drive from the west end.
Talk a little bit, but that's all I have. I know you got a long and distinguished
I do. I want to give a shout out to another young lady over at Bay Medical Center. Sharika is watching us tonight.
Yeah, she ran into a picture of her.
Ran into Larry Perry. There she is. Larry lingering around the hospitals.
Yeah, well, he was there.
He was there visiting somebody. He wasn't just lingering.
Yeah.
But I wanted to give a shout out to Sharika and all the good people over there at Bay Med. I want to give a shout out to Miss Pam Myers, my mom and dad, my daughter Rachel. Congratulations on your repeat national championship at the Latin competition up at Emory University. My son Eli, congratulations on winning the three-point competition this weekend at the Panhandle basketball tournament that they held down at Bay High. Want to give a shout out to my lovely wife Jen, my neighbors Jamie and Ed, my Aunt Ann up in Abbeville.
Oh, there.
Old Ray Morris.
Yellowwood.
Old Ray Morris is watching us, and my man Rick from the Marlin watches us every weekend.
I think we have one more picture though, real quickly.
Do we have another picture?
I think we did. This is the original LawCall kids there, Delaney and David Gray, and that's a little then and now.
Who are those adults on the left?
I know. What in the world? It's crazy how they end up keeping on growing up.
There they go. That's it. That's it. Those are our medical nurse Vicky's kids. And we couldn't do a lot of the medical work that we do, the medical malpractice cases that we do without Vicky. She's is an
essential part of the team.
An outstanding member of the team, and we love her and we love her kids. And so so it's a good show. If you didn't get your question in, which I'm guessing you didn't because we only got a couple,
give us a call.
Give us a call, shoot us those emails. We'll be happy to take them. If you have any questions that we didn't answer tonight, or if you got anything going on you need to talk to a lawyer about, give us a call there at the office. 850-215-7777 is the number for Perry & Young. And we'll see y'all next week.